Good morning, philanthropists. Is this thing on? 1 million, 2 million? Good morning, philanthropists. All right, let's get it going. My name is Justin Horton, and I am a co-chair of the African American Philanthropy Committee along with Connie Hill Johnson. On behalf of the entire AAPC, as we call it for short, our volunteers, our host committee, our honorary co-chairs, I want to welcome you to our third biennial philanthropy summit. The theme of this year's summit is inspiring 100 acts of philanthropy. So we're going to talk about that just a little bit here in a second. But for those of you that may not be familiar with the African American Philanthropy Committee, we are a volunteer group of professionals in the community that support the Cleveland Foundation's mission by promoting awareness and education to African Americans about the benefits of philanthropy and the various vehicles one can use to impact the community. So because we want this to be a very interactive session, we're going to start off with a little poll. And before we do that, though, by show of applause, how many people have attended previous summits? Fantastic. So we have a few newbies in here as well. If you recall, or for those that have been here before, you remember we've done those little clicker things, and we've taken a survey as we've gone along. So we're going to do the exact same thing today. And to help you out, we have a cheat sheet on your table that's going to walk you through this, but I'm going to make it very simple for you. Everybody pull out their phones. We're going to have you text in some information here. Normal data rates apply, so don't come back to us and say, I didn't know it was going to cost me something. So let's go ahead and put the very first question on the screen, and that question is, and listen to this before you respond, what do you think influences others to give the most? Is it taxes? Is it acknowledgement, social obligation, spiritual obligation, or legacy? So what you're going to do is in the text box area, you're going to put the number 22333, 22333, and then where you would normally put the message, you're going to put one of these numbers, which corresponds with your thoughts on the question, what do you think influences others the most to give? All right, we've got one person that's been able to do it. Come on, chime in, folks. There are at least 100 people in this room, and I know you're all checking voicemails and emails and text messages. We'll give it just another couple seconds here. All right, so by far, oh, maybe not. All right, it looks like it's going to fluctuate a bit here between social obligation, spiritual obligation, and lastly, legacy. I want you to keep this in mind because the question was, what do you think influences others to give? We're going to come back and get a little more personal in just a second. I want to spend just a few minutes sharing with you today the overall agenda of events and really the process that led to this year's theme. Are we still counting here? Why don't we turn that off? I think people are getting distracted. We'll bring it back to you at some point here soon. The good news for you this morning is that I'll be brief. The other piece of good news here is that as the co-chair, I have some influence on the agenda. And I knew that I did not want to follow any of the wonderful speakers that are coming up today. That's why you have me first this morning. We will have Dr. Vernon come up and open us up this morning. Dr. Vernon is the pastor at the Word Church. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have heard of him and all the wonderful work that he and his congregation are doing. Dr. Vernon is going to get your mindset and your heart set into giving mode. After Dr. Vernon, we're going to move expeditiously to our first session. I know you want to catch up with your friends. I know you want to say hello to your colleagues, but we really are on a tight schedule, so please move to your first session very quickly. Those sessions will be Understanding Giving for Emerging Philanthropists, philanthropic individuals and families in Cleveland. Number 3, organized philanthropy for small business. And number 4, philanthropy from the nonprofit perspective. You should have signed up for one of those workshops when you signed up, so please go to your assigned place. Our second breakout sessions will cover the various ways of giving, and we'll begin promptly at 10:30. That will wrap up, and we're going to have everyone come back for lunch at 11:45, where we're going to hear opening remarks from Terry Eason, from Ron Richard, and then we're going to move into our luncheon speaker, Dr. Henry Louis Gates, moderated by Russ Mitchell from WKYC. So we're in for a motivating day. But before we move forward in the agenda, let's talk about this theme, inspiring 100 acts of African American philanthropy. And let's dissect that for a moment. Let's start off with African American philanthropy. And Terry mentioned this. During our first summit in 2010, we focused on demystifying philanthropy. We showed and discussed that African Americans are not only the recipients of goodwill of others, but that we give a significant amount of our income to causes that are important to us. We often don't use the word philanthropy to describe our giving, but when we give of our time, talent, and treasure, it is indeed philanthropy. In fact, the definition of philanthropy is the desire to promote the welfare of others, expressed especially by the generous donation of money, but not solely, to good causes. Today, we are celebrating the good work that you and others are doing and will continue to do in the future. Let's keep going with this. 100 acts. We're very proud to be representatives of the Cleveland Foundation at such an exciting time. And if you've been paying attention at all to the local news, you realize that this is the 100th birthday of the Cleveland Foundation. And the foundation's been extremely generous. Over the last 4 months, they have given the community a gift. You know, my wife's birthday was earlier this week, and she didn't give me a gift. So for the foundation to give a gift on its birthday, I think is a wonderful thing. Not only has this been an exciting time, but if you look at the history of the foundation and all the things that they've impacted in our community over the years, everything from the Cleveland Orchestra to Playhouse Square to helping renovate and get John Hay back up to speed and running. In fact, one of the things that I love hearing about at John Hay is that they have roughly a 100% graduation rate, and almost 100% of their students are going to college. That to me is phenomenal. And lastly, inspiring. And that's the key word here, because inspiring is an adjective that describes someone, or describes filling someone with the urge or ability to do or feel something, and especially to achieve something or do something creative. We want you to walk out of today's session, today's summit, with motivated intention. We want you to figure out a way that you can give more to whatever cause is important to you, whether it be time, talent, or treasure. There's so many ways to do it. You're probably giving in your churches, you're probably giving to schools and education funds that are important to you, but we want you to do even more of that. Now's a perfect time, I think, to bring up our second question for our poll. So I know you still have your phones out. Let's see what the difference is this time. So the question now is, what influences you to give the most? Is it taxes? Is it acknowledgement, social obligation, spiritual obligation, or legacy? So let's chime in here. Just as a reminder, you want to put 22333 in the to column and then fill in one of these numbers for the response. So by far, we have social and spiritual obligations still leading the pack here. That's wonderful. So pretty consistent around what we think people give for and why we personally give. We're going to have a few more response options for you today, and actually we'll be sending out the responses. So if you didn't get a chance to respond right now, don't worry about it. We will share that a little bit later on. Just as a reminder, please turn your phones off. We're about to begin the official program with Dr. Vernon in just a moment. I wanted to make another mention that when Dr. Gates is here, we will allow a number of questions to be asked, but we ask that you fill out a card in your second session this morning or go see the registration desk up front. There is an opportunity to fill out a question and have that submitted. So with that, I'm going to bring up my co-chair, Connie Hill Johnson, to introduce our morning speaker, Dr. Vernon.